Is Batman Cape Crusader the best Batman show in a long time, the worst, or both? Let's talk about it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Eye of the Storm podcast. Today, we're talking about Batman, the Caped Crusader, the new animated show. But before we get into that, Daniel, give us the best thing you recently watched.
So my best recent thing this week is another German movie called John Rabe, which is a historical biographical film from 2009 about the events of the Nanjing massacre in 1937 in China. The story is told from the point of view of a couple of foreigners, including Germans who were members of the Nazi Party at the time, who created the safe zone and saved something like 200,000 civilians. And the movie is essentially recounts the events of that happening. And it's both a very interesting account of the historical events, as far as I could tell, pretty much historically accurate. And it's also a great story with complicated characters that kind of defy categorization of good and evil. So if you want a movie that kind of takes its historical inspiration seriously and also has shades of gray, where even though we are dealing with like the historical factions of World War II, you're still dealing with humans who make human choices with a lot of nuance to them, then this is a pretty good movie that does exactly that.
And you said it's another German movie. How well do you think it translates to international audience?
So this is an international co-production made by German, Chinese, and French studios. I saw it in the German version, but the basic events of it and the characterizations and the historical facts in it are historically accurate as far as I could tell. And the characterization of the different factions and kind of how these events unfolded, as far as I know, are basically as they really happened, which for me is always a plus for historical movies. I think you can, like, it's always more interesting if you tell it as it was and then find the human drama in the real events. And this movie does that, which is why I'm recommending it.
Yeah. So would you say the main hook is the historical accuracy or the kind of like the drama, the sort of personal drama that happened within it?
It's both, right? It's really got two aspects to it. It's this journey of this German engineer who ran a power plant for a German company in China at the time, who then gets caught up in the war. And he is a product of his time, right? He's not a saint. He's not a modern 21st century person. He is, in fact, fully like an enthusiastic member of the Nazi Party and all of that. And he's also a human being. And the movie doesn't shy away from showing both sides. And the same is true for the other characters in this. Like, it's also got other themes in there, like the characters are all foreigners in a Chinese city, and they've basically colonized, right? So China at the time had this concession system where major cities were had areas ceded to mostly European countries, and that is why they were there, and that is why they were in this position where they could create the safe zone and stuff like that. And it's just a window into what happened.
Sounds cool. Sounds very interesting, actually. I don't even want to call it best thing I recently watched. So I finally finished House of the Dragon. We just had the episode 8, the finale of season 2. And I feel like I was tricked into liking season 2 because it felt like it was doing a lot of like the right things in there. It felt like it was like, giving us some interesting sort of dynamics between sort of the characters. You had the whole question mark as to sort of whether Aemon intentionally sort of killed his, or like nearly killed his brother. In like episode 4, you had like something like potential like political intrigue in there where like they're kind of like playing sort of chess with sort of some of the different alliances that they're trying to make in here, but eventually it all doesn't really lead to anything that's interesting in season 2, and it just feels like everything is just one big setup for season 3, which I feel is like a huge mistake because it feels like season 2 could have been told in about 3 or 4 episodes, and we could have got to sort of some of the more interesting stuff in there, but it just seems like everything was fleshed out for no reason. You had like the whole like side quest of like Damon, who's like a fan favorite, who something everybody loves, who was stuck in Harrenhal, which I don't know if you sort of are familiar with Daniel, but he was like stuck in Harrenhal, just like having loads of like illusions and stuff like that for one too many episodes in this movie, and nothing really interesting happened or like really came of it, to be honest. And yeah, it just felt like kind of similar to like the later seasons of sort of Game of Thrones, where the writing is evidently weaker. I feel like they're kind of, from what it seems, they're moving away from what the books were meant to be, and I don't believe it's for the good of the show. And I'm quite interested to see what they do in season 3. Of course, that's when they're promising us sort of a total war, and they're promising us sort of all these big battles. But I think Game of Thrones wasn't always about all the big battles. Game of Thrones wasn't about sort of these like big action set pieces and things like that. And I just feel like a lot of like the character dynamics, a lot of the character interactions and stuff like that just aren't living up to season 1, because season 1 was great. Season 1 was really good, and I feel like they've just kind of missed the trick with season 2.
Yeah, I'm still stuck on season 1, episode 4, and it sounds like I've got 2 years to catch up. I don't know. It seems a bit like as somebody who's not been following it very closely and just hears people talk about it, it seems like kind of a mess.
I would say so, yeah. I mean, the general sentiment, I obviously like following the discussion of it, episode by episode. You can kind of feel people's excitement slowly start to fade as people start to realize that it's really not going anywhere at all with season 2. And not to say that the setup of it isn't great, but again, it just could have been done in 4 episodes or so. It could have been done in a short amount of time, and we could have got to some more interesting stuff later on in the season.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, as somebody who's really into the world of Westeros, but who got burned bad by Game of Thrones in the later seasons, and I've not really gotten hooked by House of the Dragon yet. I'm kind of seeing myself binging the whole thing in like 2030, like just in a week or something. It's kind of exhausting to keep up with it.
That was one of my biggest frustrations, because I know that you because I was like a big advocate of you finishing season 1, because I said it gets great, past that you were like sort of past some of the difficulties that you saw in sort of season 1, and then as I was watching season 2, and as it ended, I was like, I actually genuinely, I said to myself, I can't recommend it to Daniel, and I'm like, that's quite frustrating, because again, like you said, like the whole world of Westeros, it's very immersive. You kind of really want to be sort of in the universe essentially, but I can't recommend season 2 to you, which is a shame.
Yeah, maybe it sounds a bit like they're moving pieces into position.
Yes.
And like the story logic requires that pieces get moved into position, and then it really kicks off in season 3. That's what it kind of sounds like. But if that's what they do in 5 years, like do you wait 2 years for season 2? Season 2 happens, and you wait another 2 years. So I guess that's 4 years. That's a lot of time to wait, right?
Yeah, definitely. And you can quite easily lose people in that time, because there's plenty of other shows. I know House of the Dragon's a bigger name than some of the other shows, but there's plenty of other shows where I've been lost in sort of the gap between sort of one season and another, just because the previous season hasn't really been that strong, and it's not really enticed me to kind of go back. And again, one of the other biggest issues I have at the moment is the way that they left off sort of season 1. And again, I know you don't mind spoilers, but they left it off with Rhaenyra's son being killed, and sort of her having this look in the camera where she's kind of ready for vengeance. And then the whole of season 2, she's just an apologist, and she just is trying to skirt around war, and doesn't want to actually sort of actively engage in this, which is really frustrating. And again, it feels like they've seen that Rhaenyra's a fan favorite, and they're kind of taking the character away from what she is in the book, because I believe she's meant to be Rhaenyra the Cruel in the books, but she isn't really being portrayed as that. And I feel like it would have fit her character more. The way that they ended season 1, it would have fit her character more.
Yeah, that all makes me kind of think, let's just wait for it to shake out and then see what happens, and then go back to it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. Batman Cape Crusader.
In discussion time. Daniel, do you want to give us a quick synopsis on this one?
So, Batman Cape Crusader season 1 is a animated Batman show that is very much a spiritual successor to the animated series in the 90s. It's made by some of the same people, but it's not a direct continuation. It's basically Batman, but in the 1930s. That kind of starts off with Penguin being caught by Batman, which creates a power vacuum, which causes a whole bunch of villains to come out of the woodwork. And the story follows mostly the GCPD, and in part Batman, depending on the episode, dealing with the fallout with that, while at the same time the police are chasing Batman, because at that point he's considered a vigilante, but he's not working with the GCPD at this point. And the whole thing is very episodic and has a very loose overarching story. So it's 10 episodes that, for the most part, tell their own self-contained story while moving the status quo forward a little bit. Yeah. So what was your takeaway?
I think the immediate thing that jumped out at me was the animation style. And more so because of what we've had in recent times. So, you've had Arcane, which is sort of visually stunning. You've had Blue Eye Samurai. You've even got like Marvel, which has sort of moved the animation forward with sort of the What If series. And it just felt like, whilst the animation isn't terrible, but we've kind of seen better. So that was an immediate put off, and sort of similar to X-Men 97. And I understand that they, X-Men wanted to keep the same essence as the original series, but that's part of the reason why I couldn't really get into it, because it just felt a bit too dated, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And that was like the first thing that kind of like really stood out to me, was that it's just like the animation and stuff, it felt dated. So that was like an immediate like setback for the show. I've never watched the original sort of like Batman series with Kevin Conroy and stuff like that, or I've like caught like parts of it, but it seems like that one's probably a little bit more superior than this one. Like this one, I don't know. It's like hard to like kind of like put my thoughts on it, because one, the animation style isn't my style. Two, it being episodic and not really like kind of like following a proper story throughout doesn't really draw me, hasn't really ever been for me, that type of stuff. So that's also a setback for it. I do like the atmosphere and like kind of like the feeling of it. I do feel like the Batman in this I actually do like the Batman in this. I feel like his character is sort of really well done. I like the sort of the classic design of him having like the grey suit with obviously like the black wings and stuff like that. I do like. I've only caught 4 episodes, so it's actually disappointing to hear that this is more Gotham PD than Batman, because we're here for a Batman show and not the Gotham PD. I would say it's just not for me. I would say it's just not my type of animated show, to be honest.
So I have a very different. I come at this from a different angle. I like the animated show quite a bit, and I also kind of grew up on the wider DC animated universe, so the Justice League cartoon and various others that kind of all have that style. So another show in that style is a plus for me, not a minus, even though you could have an animated show with higher production values. Like, I like that aesthetic a lot, and I like that visual style a lot. And I also, I'm one of those people who think that serialized storytelling is a scourge on TV. I think there should be way more episodic television. I think this whole trend that everything has to be a 6-hour-long movie and you can't just have episodes that follow characters, I think is a massive mistake. I think it's created a lot of bad shows. So I was glad when I realized that this was episodic. But as a consequence of that, some episodes are much better than others. And I think there are some really good ones in here, especially towards the end, and some not so great ones. Layered on top of that, I think a bunch of the choices this show has made is negative to pointless. So and we're going to go over examples of this, but just to name one, like the series completely wastes the 1930s setting. It's purely window dressing. It doesn't inform the story, it doesn't inform the characters, it doesn't inform the plot whatsoever. It's just purely so it looks different. And I think I like it in fiction when stuff matters. So, and for the setting to not matter at all does not impress me. And there's other stuff in there too that we'll talk about. But my view is that we got a couple of great Batman episodes out of this, and the season as a whole is kind of mixed.
My question on it is, what was the ultimate purpose of it? Because I know we discuss a lot of times about why things are made, like what was the motivation behind it. And again, 4 episodes in, I don't see what they were trying to achieve with it, other than just kind of like putting out another Batman animated show for people to sort of kind of maybe feel a little bit nostalgic about, of what's come before.
Yeah, I don't think it needs a purpose other than we've got some stories to tell.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's perfectly fine. I do think it does lack kind of an overall concept, or this is the status quo, and within the status quo it will tell some stories. I think it's all very kind of rushed and superficial in terms of things informing the plot, right? So, for instance, in the first episode, they kind of set up this thing that Penguin was kind of the kingpin of crime in Gotham, and when she gets caught, that creates a power vacuum, and that causes a bunch of villains to rise, and then matters in 1 or 2 episodes. and then not anymore, right? So it's not like this is like the status quo of the show. It's not there's a gang war in Gotham and the GCPD and Batman are trying to keep a lid on it. That's not what this show is about. They say that's what it's about at the end of the first episode, and it gets mentioned once or twice, but that's not what it's about. And kind of the entire show is like this.
No, you definitely get that feeling, and you kind of feel like, because I'm only up to episode 4, so it did feel like part of it was like the whole like mystery around Batman and who he is, and obviously like the Gotham PD like trying to catch him. How does that develop through the rest of the series?
Yeah, so it doesn't really. So towards the very end, there's like I think it only really matters in the last episode where there's a showdown between the good cops, the corrupt cops, and Batman, and he kind of assists them in capturing the bad cops, which is Bullock and his partner, who are just outright bad cops in this. And then in the last 10 minutes, the show tries to convince you that there was a point. So just to give a few examples, there's the sense that Batman is struggling with the idea of losing control and kind of losing his morals and his principles, which was not a theme in the show before this, right? So there's a scene where he has a gun and he's pointed at one of the crooked cops, and they cut away, and then he shoots, or you hear a shot, and you are led to believe that Batman shot the bad cop, like the corrupt cop. And he just kind of shot he deliberately missed, right? Just to scare the cop. And that toys with the idea of Batman doesn't use guns and Batman doesn't kill. And what if this one does? But there's nothing to it. There's nothing. It doesn't come to anything. It's not the conclusion of a character arc or anything like this. There's also this thing about throughout the entire series, he's a jerk to Alfred, right? Mm-hmm. Like in every other version, Batman and Alfred, or Bruce Wayne and Alfred are very close. They have a father-son dynamic. Alfred is the only confidant that Bruce Wayne has, and in this one, he's just the help. Mm-hmm. Right? I don't know if this comes up very much in the first 4 episodes, but throughout the season, like he calls him Pennyworth, not Alfred, and he's always keeping him at a distance. And Alfred tries to offer his advice, as he always does, and Bruce puts him in his place, that kind of thing. And then in the last 3 minutes, he calls him Alfred, which feels like the conclusion to a character arc again, which is not there, or at least I didn't detect it. If it's there, then it's very hidden. And then there's also a Joker tease at the very end, where like the show went out of its way to not use the Joker in the entire season, and in the last couple of episodes, we see kind of a teaser for the Joker. But I don't think that has anything to do with anything. Like it's not like for instance, like in the Dark Knight, like at the end of Batman Begins, the Joker arriving is a consequence of Batman's actions, right? Mm-hmm. Like this whole idea that he's escalating, he's created an arms race and whatever. None of that is here. Like if that's here, then it's not clear, made clear at all. So it's just, hey, the Joker, right? And you want to see the Joker, right? So here's the Joker. But tune in for season 2.
That's what I find frustrating, because like I know that there's been many different Jokers, but it's, for me, it's like if you're gonna actively not use the Joker in sort of the story that you're trying to, or like the Batman sort of the story you're trying to tell, then don't have that tease. Don't like say, here's clearly you wanted to see the Joker, and clearly we wanted to see the Joker, but because you've seen the Joker too many times, we're not going to do it right away for you. It's just like, okay, then just like completely leave him out and then just introduce him into season 2 properly. Because I feel the Matt Reeves, the Batman movie, did it where they had the Joker kind of like tacked on at the end of it, and it was just a bit like, what was the point? Like, we didn't need to see the Joker. It's okay if we want to tell a story without the Joker. We don't always need the Joker sort of kind of like always tied or always like teased into some type of Batman medium, in my opinion.
Yeah, my take on it is, I think the Joker is way overused. Mm-hmm. I think just doing 1 or 2 Batman things without the Joker is a good thing. Mm-hmm. And also, villains should be used for thematic reasons. So if you have an idea for a story, then you pick the villain who best serves that story. Not like, what villain haven't we used yet, and what story can we tell with them, which is how it tends to be. And maybe that's a little bit unavoidable for a series where you have a lot of episodes to fill. But this is exactly how it felt. It didn't feel like there was a story reason for why the Joker wasn't there in season 1, and now there's a reason why he's there in season 2. It's more like, hey, we haven't used him yet, and the Joker is the big ticket item, right? It's the most popular, probably, Batman villain, And whether or not the Joker is going to be used and how he's going to be used is always the big discussion when a new Batman thing gets made. And so that seems to be the only motivation for teasing the Joker at the end.
Question on that one. Because you know how they've handled some of the villains in season 1 in terms of like Penguin, they turned Penguin into something a woman, and this and like I think they turned Harley Quinn into like an Asian woman and stuff like that. Do you feel that that is done intentionally to kind of like cause I don't know how much they tease him again. I've not made it to the end. I don't know how much they tease him, whether they actually like show him completely.
It's 2 seconds.
Oh, they actually show the character.
Well, they show part of his face, but it's from the laugh and from the white skin. It's clear that it's the Joker.
So I was going to say, do you feel like part of it was like the creators, you know, knowing that they've made controversial decisions, kind of like tacking that on so that people then tune into season 2 to see how they handle the biggest sort of villain in sort of Batman history?
So I think that whole angle has been pretty overplayed because it's just Penguin and it's just Harley. Everybody else is pretty close to their usual versions. At least they're not. Well, like there's a black Jim Gordon in this, right? At least that's how he looked.
There's one in the Matt Reeves Batman movie as well.
Yeah.
So
it's not the only time, but it's also one they changed from the usual version, right? But that one's like, I'm just saying there's a few where that kind of change has been made, and I think it's all superficial. Like none of it has anything to do with anything. So Penguin, for instance, being made a woman, I actually kind of like this whole crime matriarch version, but that's not Penguin, right? That's not what's interesting about Penguin. It's just a different character who is also called Penguin. In my view, they should have made the exact same character and just have it not be Penguin, but a new character. That would have been interesting, and that would have made like the Batman mythos richer. Like imagine if this was a new character who was like, I don't think there's a Batman villain, I can't think of one off my head, that is a matriarch, right? Like the Godfather, but a woman. I don't think there is one.
No, I can't remember. I can't think of...
Which would be new ground, right? Like this whole family dynamic and how she's got these sons she's bossing around and she's kept them weak so they will serve her, and then potentially you could see the story go somewhere where that comes back to haunt her, right? Because they can't function without her or micromanaging them. Like you can imagine stuff going on with this version, right? But it's got nothing to do with what I think is cool about the Penguin. I think what's cool about the Penguin is that he's like a bizarro Wayne, right? That the Cobblepots are one of the big names in Gotham's history, and Penguin is a failure as an aristocrat, and he looks at Bruce Wayne and people like him with jealousy and anger, and he acts out and he does what he does because of that anger. That's what's interesting about the Penguin to me. Like I've read comics where he's like this, and there's different versions where they lean into this. And I think that's cool. And I think that's what makes Penguin Penguin. And the character's gender has nothing to do with it. Like you could have had the same, you could have made that change and kept the dynamic in place, and it would just have been the same character and would have been an entirely superficial change. But they also changed, like the changes they made are other changes, like the family angle, like making Penguin kind of this leader of this family, which is just a different story. So my view is they should have made her a new character, and now Batman has a new villain who potentially has cool stuff going on. But making that character Penguin is just a way to stir up drama on the internet, in my opinion.
Yeah. On the other side of the argument, in maybe defense of the creators, is it possible that it's difficult to introduce a new villain, especially in comic book movies where there's, you know, Batman's probably got the most famous rogue gallery of of villains. You know, you got the Penguin, Scarecrow, Joker, etc. Is it difficult to try and insert something new into that, especially when audiences are going in there expecting to see the same type of villain, so that maybe when they have something different that they want to tell, they have to attach it to an existing villain just to try and get that familiarity in there?
So both Harley Quinn and Renee Montoya are inventions of the animated series.
Okay.
Now they are 30 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, those were new inventions, and these were just new characters who showed up in a couple of episodes, and people liked them, and so they showed up in more, and now they're established names. So you shouldn't have made a $200 million movie with that gamble. But you can, in this show, like if there's 10 episodes, you can devote 2 of them to new characters. Mm-hmm. right? Or have them be like second string characters that serve an established character or something. And if people don't respond to them, then you drop them. And if they do respond to them, then you build them up, right? In my view, that is very, very simple. People always say that's impossible and like it's just going to fail. And my answer is, number one, it is possible. Number two, you can't just try once, you have to try a bunch of times, and some of them will work. Almost every established comic book or superhero character that exists today is one of the 2% that worked. Something like that. There are many, many characters throughout Batman's been around since the 40s. So let's call it 80 years history that just were used once and never again because it didn't work or because audiences rejected them. So Penguin only shows up in one episode anyway. So you could have just made this a new character and have her be the villain of the first episode. And then she goes to prison. And then we have the rest of the plot. And then you see what the audience says about this character. If they say, hey, this was a cool character, we want more of her, then you make more. And maybe 10 years from now, that character is a staple in the Rogues Gallery. Like one example where this worked in the last 10 years is the Court of Owls, which is this secret society of assassins that has something to do with like the old aristocracy of Gotham. I haven't read all of those comics, so I don't know all the details of it. But you absolutely can add things to a mythos like this, and a show like this where you have many episodes and many characters. Devoting 1 or 2 episodes to a new character is absolutely possible. The same thing with Harley Quinn. First of all, the fact that she is Asian is purely superficial. It doesn't matter in any way, shape, or form for her character, for the plot, for her motivation, anything. Which doesn't make it a bad thing. It's just pointless, right? But the more important thing, in my opinion, about the Harley Quinn character is that they removed every aspect of her except for the therapist angle. And now she's using her therapist skills or her psychiatry skills to make villains and to make henchmen. It's a cool idea. It has nothing to do with Harley Quinn. So you have 2 options here, in my opinion. Number one is you just make her Hugo Strange, because Hugo Strange is also an evil psychiatrist, and he's also very underused. He's been used a little bit in the last 20 years, but not much. So this could have been a Hugo Strange plot that would not have raised any eyebrows, or you could have made a new character, right? So, but if it's Harley Quinn, people pay attention and talk about it, and they complain about, I'm trying to find a way to not say wokeness, but that would be the complaint, right?
Yeah.
I think it's pure trolling, and I don't care about that. Like I think sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and in these cases it's just purely pointless.
Yeah, I feel like that's
we just watched Batman 1989 and that had a black Harvey Dent in it,
and I don't think
nobody cared.
Like no one cared. No.
So whether or not it works or not depends entirely on the case.
Yeah.
But it does rub me a little bit the wrong way that it's so superficial.
Yeah.
That it has no relevance to anything, doesn't impact anything, that it doesn't inform the character or plot or anything.
On the again, I'm like trying to play devil's advocate here, just to the opposite side. Even though I do agree with you, I do feel like some of these changes are just kind of like there to just like stir up drama and sort of cause discussions online, especially with how sensitive everything is online with these things. But could you say that Harley Quinn, even being white in the first place, really informed her character, and that like her race really played any type of like significance in it? Just like with like Jim Gordon being sort of black, I don't feel like the race is as vital to it as
it should in the 30s.
Yeah. And that's what I'm gonna say. Like someone like Magneto, who obviously is was like in the wartime and this, that, and the other, and was like he was Jewish, wasn't he? He was like a Jewish kind of like
he was a Holocaust survivor, yeah.
He was a Holocaust survivor, yeah. And that's like essentially like informs his character. It's just like the question of as to like how much like does the race inform some of these like other characters that people do complain about or people do get up in arms about.
Yeah. So for some characters it matters, for some it doesn't. For Harley Quinn it probably doesn't matter. It's more like the idea that they did it just to upset people is what rubs me the wrong way. It doesn't, like, my problems with her portrayal have nothing to do with that. It has to do with like this is not what made the character cool in the first place. And it feels to me like with Harley Quinn specifically, they don't want her to be a victim because that's bad optics, but they don't have a better idea, and so they do this. It just seems very transparent. It doesn't seem like it's driven by somebody had a cool idea for where to take the character. That's basically my thing.
It's quite interesting how in recent times they've like found it difficult to make women victims in the movies, or they can't like be hit, or they can't like take any like type of damage. They always have to be like so much better than everyone. When you got like classic examples like Kill Bill, for example, who one of the great movies of like the noughties and stuff like that, where like she like you see her kind of like getting beaten up, you see her like kind of like go through like this, that, and the other, and it just feels like women characters are they're almost like too protected into a point where it's to a fault in terms of like there's then nothing really interesting about them, because you're trying to portray them as being this like perfect being, and like nothing can go wrong, they can't face any like trials and tribulations, which then just like makes the character fall flat on the audience, because that's not what makes a good character, and that's not what makes people resonate with characters.
So what I think what's happening with Harley Quinn is that her entire character concept is being an abused spouse.
Mhm.
That's what made this is like what happens when being a victim of the Joker becomes your entire personality. What happens then?
Mhm.
That's interesting, just like on a story level, on a character level, and people just don't want to see that. But at the same, Harley Quinn is one of the most popular characters at the moment, or has been in the recent past. So they want to use her, but they don't want to use her in that way. So they have to do something else.
But like,
and I think that's really what's behind this.
But like, think about like how many great stories you can tell of that, and like think about like how many people could like even like resonate with that in terms of like being in difficult relationships, or being in I don't want to say like being in an abusive relationship, but like being in situations where they feel like they're kind of like being downtrodden on, they're being like treated badly, and this, that, and the other, and then like how you then like how that informs their character, and how you then kind of like maybe even like rise from that, and like just become different from that. Essentially, I just feel like there's like potentially good storytelling there, but I feel like it's too sensitive a topic for people to like want to see.
And that's been done with Harley Quinn, right? She eventually outgrows the Joker and goes her own way and tries to leave her past behind. And there are episodes in the animated series where Batman is not sure whether that she's serious about that, and whether he can trust her and stuff, like, because of every interaction I've had in the past where everything she does is a scheme of the Joker, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these stories have been told, but you need a certain amount of preparation to tell those stories, right? You have to portray as a victim first if you would then want to show the story of how she gets better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what people don't want to do.
Yeah, sensitive times. One question I had actually while I was watching this show, again, because I at the start of this I said it's probably not for me. Who do you feel like the target audience was? Especially like you're someone that watched the original Batman series. Do you feel like it was trying to usher in kind of like a newer younger audience? Do you feel like it was like maybe something for people like yourselves that had watched the previous ones, and this is just like maybe like an addition to it, and like kind of not a continuation, but here's more of what you've liked previously? Like, kind of what do you feel was the target for this?
So I have seen the animated series more than once. I like it well enough. It's not my favorite Batman, and it's not like I'm not a super fan of it, right? But I know people who are, including like various YouTube channels and whatever, that are really into the animated series and who consider it to be the definitive version of Batman, and they really like this, just because it's like the next season of that episode of that. You can treat it as, because the 30 setting doesn't matter, and because there's no overarching plot, you can just pick out the episodes you like, and those are new episodes of the animated series. And I think that is the value that you can get out of this. Like, I don't think it does anything especially interesting, and I think it completely wastes its premise. But it tells some really cool, like out of the 10 episodes, there's maybe 3 that are really good. Like Nocturne, the one about essentially there's children disappearing at a carnival, and Batman has to find out what's going on and has to save the children. And it ties into this idea that he empathizes with orphans, and there's a justification for why Batman can help and Bruce Wayne can't, because he's the rich guy who starts poking around in the carnival, and the people there who work there don't like that, and so they kick him out. But Batman can deal with them, right? So I think that was pretty much the only time in the series where that justified the secret identity, I think. And there's some really cool stuff in there, because he shows real nobility at the end. Like, I want to recap the entire plot, but essentially he gets through to the villain and saves her, essentially, by appealing to her humanity and getting through to her. And that's like that was legitimately good. Like that was just a great Batman moment, and that was the show remembering that Batman is in fact a hero. He's like one of the things that's cool about Batman is that he's an antisocial hero, right? He is noble and he has devoted his life to helping people, but he doesn't really like people, right? And he's not good about like at the inspirational stuff, which is why he's such a great pairing with Superman, right? Because Superman is the exact opposite. But every once in a while in these shows, Batman has to reach somebody on a human level. It's not about solving a mystery or about winning a fist fight. It's about reaching, getting through to a person. And whenever that happens and where that's handled well, that's a great character moment, because it puts Batman out of his comfort zone. He has to kind of, in order to do that, he has kind of let himself be vulnerable. And Batman is the last person who wants to be vulnerable, right? And the other animated shows have gone to that well a few times, and every time it's been done well, it's been really effective. And they do this in the 8th episode. There's also an episode about a ghost bandit, basically, that ties into the history of Gotham, and there's some interesting stuff there too, where they actually do make a change to a villain's backstory, but it's interesting, right? So Gentleman Ghost is usually an English aristocrat who gets impoverished and then starts robbing people. He becomes a highwayman, and he kind of becomes a ghost and continues doing that after death. And here he's an English loyalist in the War of Independence, right? How he was an English aristocrat living in the colonies, right? And when the colonies rebelled, he sided with the English and continued to do so after death. And so he's kind of a mirror of Bruce Wayne, where both are aristocrats, but Bruce Wayne has put his life into the service of lower classes, right? In that sense, right? Whereas the villain is also an aristocrat and believes he can step on people and deserves wealth and power and status because he's born into this position. So it's like this thing where a hero and a villain start off in the same place and then go opposite directions, which I think is always a recipe for good superhero stories. So there is cool stuff in the show. It's just on an episode by episode basis.
Yeah, it seems like all the good stuff is still to come for me.
Here's the funny thing. Typically in these shows, they front load the good episode at the start because critics get usually the first 3 episodes to review, which means the first three episodes are usually the good ones, and then it drops off sharply after that in many cases. Here they did the opposite. They put all the attention-grabbing stuff like Female Penguin or whatever else at the start, which does not matter after the third episode.
Yeah.
And they put all the interesting stories in the back. And I don't know why they did this. This is the exact opposite of the playbook. And I don't know why they did this. Other than thinking they had a mediocre show on their hands and giving these episodes, like having that stuff front loaded, got people talking and distracted from the overall quality. That's kind of my conspiracy theory of what's happened here. Which, if that's true, it's kind of messed up. Number one, because it's cynical, and number two, because it's undeserved, because like episodes 7, 8, 9 are the good ones.
Yeah.
Why would you not lead with them?
And just like lead with quality as opposed to like controversy.
Yeah.
But it does seem it's quite niche, like this whole sort of kind of like animated like Batman sort of Batman series, and it feels like it probably wouldn't have got the same amount of attention. So in a sense, they do say like no press is bad press, and it gets people talking, it gets people sort of, looking into it. I kind of do understand it, but I feel like, you know, you should trust in the quality and, you know, not have to manipulate your audience, and sort of eventually the audience will find you if it's good enough, because there's been plenty of examples of just like good animated stuff, like, you know, something like Blue Eye Samurai. The only reason I watched it was because of like such positive word of mouth, is that, you know, it was never on my radar, but because everyone kept saying that the show was amazing, I eventually watched it. I loved it. I recommended it to people. More people loved it from there. And I do feel like they could have gone the same way, because again, Batman's an iconic character, and if you have great episodes, if you have like a great series on your hand with lots of great episodes, and people like start to talk about it, it will just like naturally have it will spread naturally through word of mouth, as opposed to, you know, needing to do it through controversy.
Yeah. I mean, it's Batman, so even a mediocre Batman show is still a Batman show, and people would talk about it anyway. And being the spiritual successor to the animated series, only puts more of a spotlight on it. A lot of people have a lot of goodwill to the animated show, and I just want that to be more like that. And this show promises that, and I think it partially delivers. Like it's not like it's all bad or all great or whatever. There's a couple of good episodes in this, but the other aspect is that DC movies have not had a good decade, right? But on animation they've been doing quite well. Like they put out at least, I think, multiple animated movies a year, and they tend to make decent profits because they're relatively cheap to make, and they don't make as much as the live action movies by a wide margin, but they still turn a healthy profit. They don't have any kind of controversy associated with them. Some are better, some are worse, some don't work, some work pretty well.
I do like there's always a discussion. There always seems to be, because like I've watched a few, like Batman: The Killing Joke. I've watched the Flash one and stuff like that. I always feel like there is some type of like online discussion about them, regardless of the controversy. Just because, again, like DC animated is associated with being sort of much better quality than Marvel, for example. Actually, so I think you're right in that point. Is that they probably didn't need it. Like they could have sort of rode the wave of the previous animated sort of series and just said, here's more of like what people loved before, and again, like what you discussed earlier about like introducing like something new or something like interesting with sort of maybe potentially new characters. Again, I feel like it's probably a wasted opportunity in here as well. So I just feel like they've taken a few missteps here.
It's a missed opportunity because now I want to see more of this Penguin. Just I don't need it to be Penguin. I'd like it to be a new character.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have a problem with the female Penguin.
No, not that they changed the gender, but that they changed the concept.
Yeah,
that's the thing that gets me, and especially because I like the concept.
Yeah,
I really like the dynamic between her and her sons, and this whole crime family stuff. We've gone over that, right? But I'm just saying there's good stuff in there, and I think the concept is strong enough that it could have just convinced people on its own, especially if it's just in one episode, and then that leaves people, if it doesn't work, then no big deal. If it does work, then it leaves people wanting more. It seems like a win-win to me, and I don't know why they messed up that opportunity. But I mean, I think in general, there's this cliche about how Marvel and DC can't be good at the same things at the same time. So if Marvel comics are good, then DC comics have to be bad, and vice versa. Yeah. And if Marvel movies are good, then DC movies have to be bad, but DC animation can be good. So meanwhile, Marvel animation isn't doing very much. So DC animation has been on a winning streak for much of the last 30 years. And I don't follow closely enough to have seen everything and know which parts work and whether they had their dark ages in between, whatever. But broadly, DC animation has largely been solid for a while now. And I don't think you need anything to convince people to pay attention to it. Just, hey, we made a new Batman show, enjoy. And that would have been enough, in my opinion. So I'm just checking if I made any other notes for things to bring up. I generally like how pulpy it is. Like one thing that, like, I think the 30s aesthetic is wasted, but part of that aesthetic is that it looks pretty pulpy, especially some of the villains. I don't think you made it to Firebug, right? Which is this guy with a flamethrower.
That was the last one I watched. Yeah, I think that's episode 4.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's episode 4. End of episode 4 when they just kill Firebug.
Yeah,
like the police just shoot him.
That I didn't expect. I was expecting Batman to come in and swoop in and save the day or something like that. That was a bit. Yeah.
And that is kind of part of this too. That in the 90s, because it was the 90s and because it was animation and because it was a children's show, they had a lot of limitations on what they could show, including showing guns, showing children in danger, showing alcohol, whatever. And there's actually a famous image where after the show was done, the showrunners created a painting that showed everything they were not allowed to show in the show. So Batman jumps through a window, breaking glass, holding alcohol in one hand and a baby in the other, and there's a gun being fired in the background. Like they got that out of their system, right? But in this show they don't have those limitations anymore because it's 30 years later, because it's aimed at adults and so on. And one of the ways in which this manifests is that they can just kill a villain. Like the cops can just shoot a villain. And I was like you, it was surprised by it because like surely they want to keep this character around, and surely they can't just show somebody being shot like this, right? But that's what they did. And I think that's the part where I started paying attention to the show. Before that, it was kind of a chore, and we had agreed to do this, and like it's not terrible, but I'm not really feeling it. But hey, they just shot a villain. Like that's new.
And they painted the cops as the heroes from it as well, which was like
Yeah.
okay, like, and then they like raised the whole like kind of like power dynamic in sort of the whole Gotham PD where sort of they had to like relinquish like the task force to these guys as well, which was like all quite interesting stuff.
Yeah, so there's good stuff in here. Let's see what else. We've got here Firebug's murder is where it gets interesting. Or like even Harley making henchmen through conditioning, like running her own thought reform camps is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't go anywhere. Like it's one scene and it's not motivated, it's not set up, it's nothing that happens because of this. Like I don't know.
Like we can have a quick debate about like episodic versus like kind of like serialized series. Do you feel like I feel like that's part of the problem is that like they can introduce a lot of sort of kind of like interesting concepts or interesting sort of like ideas or even like interesting potential like story plots that could be fleshed out over sort of a couple episodes in a season, but it feels like because it's like episodic, and especially with this where they only have like 25 minutes to sort of tell the story that they want to tell in the episode, is that it then feels like a lot of things doesn't really lead to anything, and then it feels almost like what's the point and what's maybe like the ultimate payoff. Of course you can have like your kind of like overriding themes, and maybe like your like main hero goes through an eventual journey throughout some of the whole series whilst things are just like happening, but then it just like, to me, it just kind of sometimes feels a little bit too disjointed, and it just feels like nothing really like I mean, it's episodic, nothing really connects well, but then it's like nothing really connects well, and I can't like really like relate or connect to anything long term over the series.
So here's my thing about episodic versus serialized. I think serialization is a crutch. A lot of the times it just means we get a 2-hour movie that gets stretched out to 6 hours. Also, it means that the cognitive load on watching a show is much higher than for episodic, which means there's just less energy and less willingness on the audience to do it. It's more exhausting. It requires more engagement. And it also encourages bad storytelling in many cases because you often have 4 hours of story stretched out to 6 hours or something like that. Like virtually every Netflix or other streaming series in the last 7-8 years could be described as that, right? And that goes back all the way back to Stranger Things and the first Daredevil series, where you say, okay, the overall plot is pretty cool, and there's some good episodes here, especially the beginning and the end. But in the middle, you could easily cut 2 or 3 episodes. Mm-hmm. And that just incentivizes padded out storytelling. Like every medium has this. Like people used to write for advertisers and for the ad break, with like story beats lined up with like so that the payoff comes after the next ad break and whatever. But I feel like back then people had figured out how to tell good stories around the limitations of the medium, and here it's just the medium ruining the story. And by medium I mean streaming, right? Because that has led to the binging model, and that has led to this whole idea that it's high engagement and you watch the entire thing all the way through, and it's all about the shock moments, and it's all about keeping up suspense at maximum throughout the entire time. And all of that has been to the detriment of good stories. I think if you have a story that requires that format, then you should do that. And if you have a story that is more episodic, if it's like, this is the case of the week or the monster of the week or the mystery of the week, then it should be more episodic. And I also think the best episodic shows have like a loose continuity between them, where things that happen in one episode stay true in the next episodes. And it may not matter in the next episode, but it might matter 2 seasons from now or 5 episodes from now or something. I've got my examples of this. Stargate was amazing at this, right? Where they would bring back an artifact from our planet, and then 3 seasons later, they used it to solve a problem because the writers had like a list of stuff that was true in the world. But you could largely view the episodes out of order. But if you watch them in order, you can get that payoff. Yeah. So episodic does not mean it's all just formula or something like that, right? Or that it can't be complex or whatever. I think these episodes actually are really well written for the most part in terms of delivering a story in 25 minutes. And I think having that challenge and not having to draw it out endlessly, but rather having to have a beginning, middle, and end in this tight time frame causes people to think very hard, okay, what's important and how do we best convey this information? How do we do setup and payoff in a timely manner and all of these things? And the end result is really enjoyable television for me. I've been waiting like over a decade for decent episodic storytelling, because the fashion has been for so long that it has to be serialized. And so for somebody to come along and just make a show where some episodes are not so great and some are pretty good, and I can just pick out the good ones. Like if I watch this again, I'm watching 3 or 4 episodes. I'm not watching the entire thing.
Yeah.
That's fine. I don't have to sit through the bad stuff to get to the good stuff.
But then you have to sit for the bad stuff initially to find the good stuff, which is the problem.
But that's true for everything, right? You don't know ahead of time what's good. Like we can write up a recommendation about which episodes are watching, and then if somebody wants that, they can use that to guide. They can just skip the episodes we didn't like, right? But at the same time, I watch a lot of stuff where I end up thinking it's not worth it. But then I remember where it wasn't worth it, and I don't watch that again. But if I have to sit through 3 bad seasons to get to an amazing payoff in a serialized show, then I can't watch the good seasons because I don't have the patience for the bad seasons.
Yeah.
But here I can say, okay, episodes 7 and 9 are great, so I'm going to watch those again. And I'm not going to miss anything.
I feel like in terms of like the serialized things, I feel like the main issue, like even though I prefer like things kind of like building on top of sort of what's come before in terms of like a continued storytelling and like, you know, kind of like one episode kind of like leading to another and this, that, and the other. Where I've always felt where they've kind of gone wrong with it is that they always have a good idea for the first season, and when it's a hit, they kind of like scramble, and you know, season 2 never really lives up to the hype of season 1 in most of the TV shows that I've seen. You know, I think the most famous one is probably Prison Break. Actually, where I feel like Prison Break season 1 and 2 are probably the strongest, and then everything that comes after it is you can kind of like leave it, and you know, you don't really need to watch it. For things that I've always enjoyed, I just enjoy like seeing character growth. I enjoy seeing kind of like stories kind of like developing over multiple episodes in the season. I enjoy like an overarching story, especially like if it's like a mystery as well. There's like been so many like, you know, series where it's like a mystery and you're kind of like unfolding it episode by episode. And even to compare it to something like Arcane, which is like another animated show where like everything is literally just like building upon, like literally there's like and these are like maybe like 40-minute episodes where not an episode is wasted. Everything is just like building on top of like what's come before, and everything's like being informed by what was there before. And like even like scenarios where like episode 1 there's like sort of small things that then like play a part in like episode 5 and this and the other. I just feel like that's has me a little bit more engaged, as opposed to something that's episodic where it's like, okay, I can watch like maybe 1 or 2 episodes, but then I don't really have to like watch the rest, and I can quite quickly like fall out of like watching the series, for me anyways.
I mean, I'm not saying episodic is the way to go. I'm just saying for some formats it's the way to go. Yeah. And I want there to be a mix.
Yeah.
When for the last 15 years, it's just been taboo. Like you can't do it.
Yeah. I think
because there were a couple of serialized shows 20 years ago that did well, and then everybody believed that episodic is a lower form of storytelling. I also think that good episodic television has this overarching arc, where especially often it would be beginning of the season, end of the season, and then a couple of milestones, and then in between you have the interchangeable episodes. And so if you watch the entire season in sequence, you do get an ongoing story, but it's not every minute of every episode. And like there's good and bad versions of episodic as well as serialized. And I can also give you counterexamples of shows that had a weak first season and then found their stride later on. Like Buffy the Vampire Slayer notoriously has a pretty weak first season. Like it's not bad, but it's not good, right? It's not the best. But over the course of season 2, 3, they really find their stride, and then they tell some pretty great stories. But if you were to just watch the first season, you would not get a very accurate image of the quality. So that's one example. That others too, Parks and Recreation is not a show until the second season. Like first season is basically an Office ripoff, and then they find their voice at the beginning of season 2, and then there's 6 more seasons of wonderful television. Right. So if I were to recommend, if I were to recommend Parks and Recreation, you've not seen it, right?
I've seen clips. Not like I've.
It's one of the greatest comedies ever. I highly recommend it. But you can't watch the first episode or even the first season and get a good sense of what it's about. And if you jump right into season 2, you don't know who any of the characters are. So there are episodic shows that take a while to find their footing. But because they have the freedom to experiment and just drop stuff that doesn't work, I think that allows them to be better and become better.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement that essentially there's just horses for courses. Like there's sort of certain stories that work well over as a movie, certain stories work well as like a series and stuff like that. It's just horses for courses essentially, and it's just like about the writers and the creators finding the right medium for the stories that they need to tell, basically. Anything else before we wrap up this episode?
I think that was about it. I'm glad I watched it. If I were to rewatch it, I would rewatch maybe 3 episodes of it. There's nothing actively bad about it for me. It's more like there's a bunch of stuff like the 30 setting, for example, that is just pointless and just takes up space. And I don't know why they didn't do anything with it. And it's kind of distracting that they didn't. But yeah, and also one other thing, I think we kind of touched on it earlier about Batman not being the focus on all episodes. That's bothered a bunch of people. Where about half the episodes are focused on the GCPD and some of the episodes are focused more on Bruce Wayne. And that didn't bother me. I thought that was fine. Yeah. Like they found that balance according to what the story was about. And I thought it was fine. It doesn't, like the GCPD episodes don't feel like filler to me. I think they fit in just as much as the Batman centric ones. And they're still about Gotham and still about these characters, and Batman still appears in them. So, like, if what you're interested in is Batman doing Batman things, then yeah, it's like especially the first couple of episodes are going to be a bit of a letdown, maybe, because there's not as much Batman in there as you might think. But he's there throughout the season, and I think if you are up for, I like the GCPD characters. Like, there've been comics that are entirely about them where Batman doesn't appear at all, and the idea of being a cop in Gotham City is an interesting idea to me. And you can tell interesting stories, and I think some of these episodes do that. So that wasn't a deal breaker for me.
No, I think I was going to say that as well. Like, one thing I actually did like was I forgot what the female cop is.
Renee Montoya.
I actually feel like they did a good job sort of kind of introducing her in like some like the early episodes and stuff like that. And she's actually one of my preferred characters. Again, there isn't like too many like consistent characters in this, but like she's probably like one of my preferred characters in some the series actually.
Yeah, and I don't regret having watched any of it. It just it's kind of there's some good parts and some average parts, but no real bad parts.
Yeah, and I think for as well for like 25-minute episodes, it kind of like has the right sort of like time length as well to sort of quite easily get through this and sort of again like find the ones that you do like, find the ones that you don't like, and again sort of for someone like me that is a Batman fan and like does like love sort of like the whole like universe and stuff like that. I'm 4 episodes in, I'd quite easily sort of finish this, even though I'm still a little bit like mixed on like some things, and especially like the animation and stuff like that. But I feel like you said there's enough in there to have me continue and finish it to the end.
And because it's episodic, you can just watch an episode every couple of days when you have time, right? Like you don't have to sit down and have it take up 100% of your attention. I think that's a benefit too, and I think, like I said earlier, there just needs to be there's a place for that. And there just needs to be a mix. Yeah,
and it's again like the because I was just like thinking of like the Marvel examples, because like I think you had like the Acolyte recently where they were like half-an-hour episodes and they didn't know how to tell a good concise story within sort of that time frame. Whereas like again like what you're saying for this one is that like they know how to use the time in this, they know how to like tell sort of beginning, middle, and end sort of in the 25 minutes. But there's a lot of examples where it just kind of, especially like where it just like ends abruptly and you're like oh, and you're like okay, like how, like what happened there basically.
Yeah, I have not seen the Acolyte. I have no intention of changing that anytime soon, but it looks like a show that doesn't know how to use its time. It doesn't know how to structure it, and doesn't know how to make use of its format or whatever. And this one absolutely does. Like these are self-contained 25-minute episodes, and I wish there was more of an overarching like theme or something. Like where there's this gang war in the background and we don't deal with it every episode, but it comes up every once in a while and it's a reality throughout or something. That would have made it a stronger show. But given that that's not what we got, it's still okay. It's still fine.
Cool. Final thoughts.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Will you be
tuning
into season 2?
Probably. Yeah. I won't go out of my way to see it, but it's fine. It's watchable. I give it a pennyworth out of 5.
Okay. I would say the 4 episodes that I've seen so far, I'd probably give it like a 6.5, 7 out of 10. To be honest, it's like again, like I said, it's not too offensive. It's probably not like my preferred.
There was nothing offensive about this.
No, not at all.
Like I have gotten upset at shows because of, I don't know, the mentality that went into them or whatever, and that's not this.
No. This is like, for me, this is like kind of like a light, like kind of like background TV watch where like I'm maybe like doing something and it's just like in the background and like half paying attention to it. It's like that type of show for me.
Yeah. One thing we didn't touch on, but that I quite liked, is that Batman is an investigator in this. Like, he watches people and he draws conclusions and then he intervenes. He doesn't just beat people up.
Yeah.
And that's a step in the right direction, because I think Batman's kind of moved in the wrong direction for the past 20 years, where he's just like a guy in body armor beating people up. And like, I like the Batman who trained with magicians and ninjas and is an investigator and who deserves the name world's greatest detective. Yeah. And this guy is not the world's greatest detective, but he is a detective. And that's a step in the right direction. Yeah, no, definitely. You definitely feel that in like the first couple of episodes anyway. You kind of like feel that from the character. And that's actually supported by it being so GCPD centric, because there's Batman watching in the background and he will intervene when he needs to intervene. And there's a few episodes where this happens, where he intervenes at the right moment, but he's not leading the investigation. He lets the cops do their thing, and then he knows when to step in, usually when they can't proceed any further. So I'm guessing that comes in the later episodes. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not thinking of any one specific moment, but like that's kind of the thing where the cops are doing the investigation and Batman's on the rooftop watching. And then, but he's not just a passive observer. He's almost like he's teaching them a little bit, kind of. Not really, but that's like he waits for them to mess up and then he intervenes. But if they don't mess up, then he's not needed. And that supports this whole investigator angle, as opposed to just brute force slamming people into concrete walls. Batman. There's a little bit of this too. Like, he tortures a guy in the first episode, right, by threatening to throw him off the roof. And I don't like that. But like, Batman should be enlightened and rational enough to know that doesn't work. But okay, it's a thing Batman does. Okay, and it only happens once, if I remember correctly. From what I've seen, yeah. From what I've seen, From what I've seen, yeah. But I do also like seeing Batman absolutely pummel. I like him being awesome, but he should be a ninja. He shouldn't be a brawler. Yeah. But that's just my personal preference. Yeah. No, that's fair. But yeah, I think that's everything for today. So thank you very much for working with us this episode. Of course, put your thoughts down below. What did you think of some of the changes? What did you think of the series overall? And of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Bye-bye. Ciao.